Personally, I think it's incredibly concerning how many people today are afraid of failure. So much to the point that it paralyzes them and they would rather choose to do nothing instead of failing. But where will that get you? How is that going to help you grow? It won't. It never will. The truth is, we need to recondition our mindset and our relationship with failure. We need to learn how to fail forwards, how to become self aware and curious enough to ask questions about our failures. How can this help me become better? What action do I need to change next time? What can I learn from this lesson? When it comes to the road many of us have chosen as entrepreneurs, we need to accept the fact that failure is a natural part of this experience. You will fail, period. That's not the question. The question is, how will you respond when you do? And how can you reframe your failures as an opportunity to still win by moving forward with the new knowledge you acquired? My name is Gavin McHale. I am a business performance coach, which means it's my job to help you make the kind of money you deserve by getting out of your own way. And I have an incredibly interesting relationship with failure. Okay. I am a former high level hockey player. I made it to the Western Hockey League, which is just one level below professional hockey, and thought I was a pretty big deal. I was playing in front of tens of thousands of people. I got to travel all around Western Canada and the United States to play hockey as a teenager. But in reality, that version of me was scared to death of making a mistake. I lived with what Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset, where in my head, it was like I was performing on a stage and every single mistake I made showed the audience that I wasn't good enough. Every failure meant that they saw the real me. Every failure meant that I was a failure. And so what happened to me was I put a ton of pressure on myself to perform, which added to this inherent pressure that was already there. My nerves got to the point where they actually hindered my ability to play freely and hindered my ability to let my skill set shine through. They often got the better of me and led to silly, out of character mistakes. I was so worried about the outcome of the game and had these crazy high expectations for exactly how things were going to go that I was always disappointed if anything went wrong or went off course. And most nights I would actually rather sit on the sideline watching my team play than actually play because it was easier on my psyche. I ended up fixating on every single mistake I made and I blew it out of proportion in my head. Does this sound familiar? Okay. As a high performer, as someone who thinks the same way as I did, I'm sure you put a ton of pressure on yourself to perform for external validation. Your nerves actually hinder your ability to be you, to bring out what you do best. You're focused on the outcome that leads to expectations and disappointment. You would rather sit on the sidelines of life instead of taking a chance on yourself. And I'm almost certain you beat yourself up for every single mistake you make. Okay. Now, the definition of failure, the actual definition of it is a lack of success or an inability to meet an expectation. And I think that's a fair definition, but it's missing one thing. I propose we shift to a lack of success or inability to meet an expectation yet, because you're going to meet it. In fact, failure is along the path to you meeting it. It's going to help you meet that expectation faster. Okay. Most of you would agree that what you say to yourself when you fail right now is, this means I'm not good enough. This means I've done something wrong. This means something about me as a human being and my character. But really, we need to reframe failure not as not being good enough to failure as being the best form of feedback that we could ever receive. The best form of feedback that we could ever look for is failure. Now, I talked about the fixed mindset earlier, and I'm going to dive into both, but there's a major flaw in the fixed mindset. Okay. It doesn't take into account our ability as humans to learn. We can learn, and the best way to learn is through failure. I think it was my fourth speeding ticket when I was 18 years old when my dad said to me, Gav, I don't think you know how to learn any other way than the hard way. And he was right. And isn't that really the only way to truly learn and change our behavior is the hard way? Because failure is the best way for us to learn. Okay. Now, if we were to compare the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, to go a little deeper on this fixed mindset, it's very fear-based and it's very externally focused. Okay. It relies on this saying or this kind of rhetoric that if I fail, everyone will see me for who I really am. And like I said, it's like you're on a stage performing. And if you make a mistake, everyone sees the real you. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have the growth mindset, which is curiosity based instead of fear based. It's focused internally instead of focused externally. And the rhetoric is, if I fail, I will learn faster. If I act, if I move forward in any way, I will learn faster. And the analogy here is like you're playing in a sandbox. It's like we build a sandcastle, we can knock it down, we can change it, we can adjust as we want, but none of it really matters because we're just playing a game that we made up anyway. So, how do we shift ourselves from this fixed mindset that says, every time I fail, I suck, I'm no good, and I'm never going to learn anything, to a growth mindset that actually allows us to learn something from the inevitable failures we're going to experience? Okay. The first step in this, in my opinion, is actually taking a pause, is just taking a breath. So when you fail, when you notice yourself starting to fall into this judgment and this frustration and this anger, take a moment, take a breath. Just like any time that you're angry with somebody else, the best bet is to take a breath so that you can respond to the situation instead of reacting. Okay. Reacting to a situation is a very emotional and a very snap decision that usually solves something in the short term, but makes it way worse in the long term. Responding actually helps everybody win in the situation and helps not only short term, but also long term. And this comes from space. This comes from creating more space between when the event happens and when we actually take an action from that event. Okay. So the first step, when you fail, take a moment, take a pause. Second step, I like to say the judgment and curiosity live next door to each other. It's one of my favorite sayings, and it surprises people every time because in reality, when it comes to emotions, judgment and curiosity are very similar to one another. The only difference is punctuation. While judgment uses a period or even an exclamation point to tell you how stupid you are and how wrong you are and how bad you are, curiosity replaces that with a question mark. Curiosity allows us to dig in and find what actually matters in the failure. Our brains are built to solve problems. Most of the time, when a problem comes up, we're so busy being angry and just beating ourselves up that we forget to solve the actual problem. And asking that first question with curiosity allows us to go down the path of solving problems, right? So if you think of things that you say to yourself when you make a mistake or when you fail, I'm such an idiot, I'll never get past this. This is because I'm not good enough. Here we go again, right? And if you add a question mark to the end of those, am I an idiot or did I make a mistake? How will I get past this instead of I'll never get past this? And now we can start to make a more informed decision based on our answers to those questions. Okay. Most of us are so busy judging ourselves and being angry that we didn't get the result we wanted that we miss the opportunity to learn something and make an informed decision next time. So if we can just take a moment, we would see that this failure gave us an experience we didn't have before. And with more experience comes more clarity, comes more lessons. We always want more experience, right? And in that clarity and those lessons, we can take a different, more informed action next time. That is what growth is a different action, a different response to the same event or to a similar event. If we want to grow, we must experience failure. So the last thing I'll leave you with is when you start to recognize judgment, frustration, anger coming up, those do not serve you solving problems and you growing. So look at judgment, frustration, and anger as an opportunity to start asking questions, because when you start asking questions, that's when you start to be able to use failure to your advantage. Okay. We often think that the people who succeed the most are the people who fail the least. In fact, it is actually the people who learn the fastest from their failures that are going to succeed the most and are going to succeed over the long term. Hope this has been helpful for you. If it has, please click the subscribe and like button, and we'll see you on the next video.